Hello friends, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, Sunny Days with Sam. Today we are going to be making our very own crochet hooded bolero. If you've been following along with me on Instagram or my YouTube channel the past few weeks, you've been following my crochet along, where we did step by step, week by week, what we had to do to build our very own crocheted bolero. We finished up our crochet along for the bolero this past week, so I wanted to put together a full-length bolero tutorial for my channel. If you prefer written patterns, I have two versions of the crocheted bolero available on my website and my Etsy. I have the hooded bolero and I have the moss fairy bolero. This tutorial is going to show you the steps for both. For my personal hooded bolero, I used buttons for a closure. For my moss fairy bolero, I use very long ties. So in this tutorial, I'm going to be using the tie method that you can find in my moss fairy bolero pattern. Remember that my bolero patterns start with your typical 6-corner hexagon. I realize that there's a variety of ways that you can make a crochet hexagon, so this is not the only way to do it. This is just the way that I do it. I make hexagons really naturally now. I can almost do it without looking, so here are the first few steps that I take. I always start my hexagons, and honestly, every single project, I tie a circle around my pinky so that I can make that first loop that I can insert my hook in. I'm going to chain 3 to 4 depending on how big I want that center circle to be, and then I'm going to slip stitch into chain 1. That's going to form a circle that you're going to work your 3 double crochet clusters into. To create that first round of clusters, I chain 3 and then I insert 2 double crochet into that circle that I formed. In between every cluster, I chain 3. So you're going to have a total of 6 clusters and 6 corners. So remember, that first cluster is going to be chain 3, 2 double crochet. The rest of the clusters are going to be 3 double crochet. So the pattern, whenever it comes to creating your hexagon, is you're going to have 3 double crochet, chain 3. That'll form one of your corners. And you're going to follow that pattern 6 times. So you'll have a total of 6 3 double crochet clusters, including that first one, and you're going to have 6 chain 3 corners. At that last 6th 3 double crochet cluster, you're going to chain 3 and you're going to slip stitch into that original chain 3 that acts as the 3 double crochet for cluster 1, corner 1. Once you form row 1 with the 6 3 double crochet clusters and the 6 chain 3, you're going to chain 3 to start row 2. And then you're going to insert 3 double crochet, chain 3, 3 double crochet into corner 1. In between every corner, you're just going to be inserting 3 double crochet clusters. Do not insert 3 double crochet, chain 3, 3 double crochet into the same stitch all around, or else you're going to deform your hexagon. So remember, for every corner space, it is 3 double crochet, chain 3, 3 double crochet. In every space between those corners, you're only going to insert 3 double crochet. And as your hexagon grows and becomes larger, you're going to have more of those single 3 double crochet clusters in all the chain spaces. In that last chain space, it'll be the 3 double crochet that you started row 2 with. You're just going to insert 3 double crochet, and then you're going to move back into corner 1 to start row 3. For this bolero, we're only going to be working with 3 rounds of the entire hexagon. Once you finish that 3rd row of the hexagon, we're going to do a weird flip. So you're going to insert 3 double crochet into that next corner space. You're going to flip your work, and then you're going to chain 3 and go back the other way. This is going to give you that flat edge of the bottom of your bolero. You're welcome to speed this video up. You're welcome to slow it down. I do a color change for each of my rows just so you guys can see visually where the flips are, where that twist is, and how we're going to build up your bolero. If you're a visual learner like I am, you're welcome to fast forward this video to 8 minutes where I take a pause and I show you what the end of this row looks like. It shows a visual of where the flip is, how we create that flat bottom edge. Right now we're working on row 4. Remember, we are starting row 4 at the end of row 3. We're going to insert 3 double crochet into that last corner that we were in. You're going to chain 3 and flip your work. So row 4 is not going around the entirety of the hexagon, only around the top. And if you are interested in seeing what the end of row 4 looks like, you're welcome to speed up this video to 8 minutes where you can see a visual of how the bolero starts being formed. You're welcome to rewind this video if you would like to see how I did that first step of row 4. You're welcome to speed it up if you feel like you have a hold on how we're supposed to be building this bolero. Since the bolero can be a little complicated and confusing, since it's a free-form design based off of a written hexagon design, I always like to walk you guys step through step of what I'm doing. So remember, at the corner spots, we're still doing the 3 double crochet, chain 3, 3 double crochet cluster in all the corners. In the spaces between the corners, we are only inserting 3 double crochet clusters. If you're more comfortable with step-by-step, row-by-row, fully explained, slowed down tutorials, please tune into my crochet along playlist or my Instagram highlights. I did a week-by-week review of how I built my bolero. So I did it row by row. One day I did row 1, the next day row 2, all the way up until it came to building my ties, building my hood. I won't lie, even whenever I'm building boleros, I still have to double check what I'm doing because that first initial flip always confuses me. Remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel where you can get a 50% off coupon to use on my website forever and always. If you have ideas for my next crochet along, please feel free to DM me, comment below, you can email me. The best way to get in contact with me is usually by email or on the contact form on the homepage of my website. I occasionally check my Instagram DMs, but I mostly use my Instagram DMs just for pattern testing. The next pattern that I'm going to be doing for our crochet along is going to be my Wook hood. It is currently being tested, but I've been working on a tutorial on the side. So hopefully by this Monday, we're going to start our next crochet along. And those videos are going to be available on my Instagram and my YouTube channel. Here you are, almost finished with row 4 of your bolero. This is the last corner that you're going to be inserting 3 double crochet, chain 3, 3 double crochet. You're going to work a series of 3 double crochet clusters down that last side of your bolero. You're going to end with 3 double crochet, and then you're going to chain 3, and you're going to flip your work. If you're comfortable with how this pattern is going, you're welcome to speed this video up to 8 minutes, where you can see a laid flat version of what your bolero is going to look like. Remember that this pattern is available written on my website and on my Etsy. I have 2 versions of it, the Moss Fairy Bolero and the Hooded Bolero. Here we are finishing up on row 4. We're just going to insert 3 double crochet into that last corner so that we can keep forming that straight bottom of your bolero. You can see that you are still working with 6 corners, but you are not working across that bottom part. Now, if you would decide that you want this bolero to be longer at the bottom and provide more coverage, my recommendation is that you make that original hexagon larger so you can make your hexagon more than 3 rows. I always like my boleros to be very cropped, be above the chest, and then be able to tie across or button, but everybody has their own preference. So remember, we ended row 4 with that 3 double crochet cluster. We're going to chain 3, and then we are going to insert 3 double crochet into that next chain space. You're going to continue this pattern for as many rows as you would like. For my boleros, I usually make them for like a size small medium. I do anywhere from 18 to 25 rows. I'm going to have a size guide, the measurements that I use for my pieces, in the description of this video. You can also find my sizes on my website. I have measurements for sizes extra small through 4XL up on my website. A lot of my patterns are made to measure though, and that is what I use whenever it comes to making customs or sizes that don't fit me. This tutorial is going to show you every stitch that I make, every step that I take for this bolero for rows 1 through 5. After row 5, I'm going to skip forward to my finished product where I have all of the rows for at least one side of my bolero. You're welcome to speed this video up. You can slow it down, whatever you need. This pattern is just going to continue exactly the way that we've been doing it with the 3 double crochet and all the chain spaces. At the corners, we're going to 3 double crochet, chain 3, 3 double crochet. At that first and sixth, the bottom corners, you're only going to insert one set of 3 double crochet, and then you're going to chain 3 and flip your work. Remember, for sizes small, medium, which is the size that I'm going to be building in this tutorial, I use anywhere from 18 to 25 rows. Here we are finishing up row 5. Here's a lay flat example of what 5 rows of your bolero is supposed to look like. And here's how you fold it. You're just going to fold that bottom part in half. You can start to see the sleeve, the body of the bolero. Where I'm pointing right now is the opening. This is the bottom. Like I said, this pattern really just follows the same pattern as a hexagon cardigan. We're just not building on all 6 sides. Remember, even though we are working with only 5 sides of our bolero technically, we are still working with all 6 corners. It's just those last and first corners, you're only going to be inserting the 3 double crochet and then chaining 3 and flipping your work. Remember, just like if you're making a hexagon cardigan, you have to make 2 sides. So this is only a visual representation of one side of our bolero. You're going to need to copy all of the steps that you took to get this far so that you can make your second side of your bolero. Here we are with 6 rows, 7 rows, 8 rows. For this specific bolero, I'm going to be adding cuffs. So I only did 15 to 16 rows because I wanted to make sure that my sleeves weren't too long. Helpful hint, if you're not someone that uses stitch markers, I don't use stitch markers. I always count my rows by starting in that center circle. So the very first step that you took in building your hexagon. And I count up the clusters of a corner. It helps me figure out how many rows that I have. It helps me figure out my starting point, my ending point. Here we are, finished up with both sides of our bolero. So now we're going to start sewing them together. Remember, there are a variety of different ways that you can start sewing your boleros. Everybody does it differently. I always start by sewing across the top of the sleeves first. I build my sleeves, and then I sew up the center seams of my bolero so that everything is connected. But you can honestly do it any way. That's a visual representation of where that opening of your bolero is going to be. When it comes to sewing up my items, I always do a little pattern with my single crochets. I always insert one single crochet, two single crochet. I continue that across because I don't like the way that the yarn pulls in if I only insert one single crochet into every stitch. I want my pieces to be flowy. I don't like them to be stiff. I don't like the material to be pulled in, and I don't like the seams to be hard and stiff. Like I said, there's a million different ways that you could do this. Everybody has their own preference. I just slip stitch and single crochet across the top and through the middle of my bolero so that I can get everything connected. So if you're comfortable with sewing pieces together, you're welcome to fast forward on this video. If you want a little bit more of a visual, you can follow along, but I'm going to jump to a finished sewn sleeve. That is the end of the sleeve. I'm going to build onto the sleeve from there. Remember that my patterns are made to measure, but I do offer crochet measurement guidelines on my website. That includes all sizes from extra small to 4XL. Remember to complete this pattern on the other side of your bolero. You should have 2 finished halves of your bolero with sewn sleeves across the top of your arm. The next step is we're going to build onto the sleeve, make the sleeve longer because it's not long enough on me yet, and then we're going to add cuffs. I'm going to be doing color changes throughout this pattern as well so that you can identify where I start and end my additional rows. Whenever I add on to rows for pieces like this, I always slip stitch into that last seam. I just think that it holds the piece together better. I think that the piece forms better that way, but you can start your rows anywhere that you want. I'm a freeform crocheter, so I've learned that sometimes the things that I do whenever I crochet, people do differently. There's no right or wrong way. Whenever it comes to adding rows, I always start with a slip stitch, 1/2 double crochet, and then 1 double crochet, and that acts as my first cluster. For these sleeves, we're just going to be inserting 3 double crochet clusters into every chain space around the sleeve. When you finish row 1, I slip stitch into that first single crochet, and then I continue by chaining 3, and then I'm going to insert 3 double crochet into every chain space, including that chain 3 that I'm showing right there. From here on out, I'm just going to go around the piece. I'm going to be working in rounds and doing 3 double crochet clusters in every chain space. You'll see that I'm going to be doing some color changes throughout this piece. You're welcome to continue with one color. You're welcome to continue with a million colors, really whatever you prefer. The next step is going to be building our cuff. So here we are finishing up the last row of the sleeve. Now we're going to start decreasing our sleeves. I always like my sleeves to have a little puffy vibe to them before I put on a cuff. The way that I decrease my sleeves is super simple. I literally just go in between every 3 double crochet cluster in those chain spaces. Instead of inserting 3 double crochet, I just insert 1 single crochet until the sleeve is the size that I want it to be, and then I start the cuff. For my sleeve decrease, I did a total of 12 single crochet. That pulled the sleeve in enough for me to be comfortable with building my cuff. My cuffs are super simple. You can fast forward if you're interested in just starting the cuff right away. If you want to work on your other side, you're welcome to do that too. For this, I'm going to show you all 12 single crochets that I insert to decrease my sleeve. I'm going to show you what it looks like at the end of that step, and then we're going to move on to creating our cuff. My cuffs are super simple. I just insert 1 double crochet in every stitch from that decrease step that we took. For this specific bolero, I do 5 rows of that double crochet to form my cuff, and then I slip stitch and I tie off my work. And then I'm going to show you guys how to sew your bolero up. We're going to build you a hood and some ties, and you will have a completed piece by the end of this tutorial. Remember that my crochet along starts again on Monday. New videos out on my Instagram and my YouTube every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. The next crochet along that we're going to be doing is my Wook hood. It is a new pattern that I finally wrote out. I made the piece 2 years ago, last year sometime. Either way, I've been sitting on this piece for a while. I've just been lazy and I never finished the pattern. So I finally finished it. I have it in testing. It comes out next month if you're more into written patterns. But if you're like me and you like tutorials, I'm going to have a video tutorial coming out. If you're new to my channel, welcome. If you subscribe to my channel, please send me a screenshot of your subscription so I can send you a 50% off discount code that you can use on my website. This is for patterns, customs, ready to ship anything that you want. Here is a completed side one of our bolero, everything from the sleeve, the body, the cuff. You're going to repeat every step and form that second side, and then we're going to meet up and we're going to sew our halves together. Important note, whenever you're sewing up your pieces, remember that you need to only be sewing the back seam. You don't want to sew both sides of that bolero or else you're not going to have an opening for the front. Just something to keep in mind because I've made the mistake of sewing across the entire bolero and then you can't even put it on. Once you have sewn your bolero together, we're going to add a hood. Some people don't like a hood. That's totally fine. I'm going to show you how I build my hoods. I always start at that center seam, and then I count over 6 to 7 chain spaces on each side. If you're like me and you don't like sewing pieces together, the whole building a granny square or building 2 granny squares and then sewing everything together just sounds like a pain because then you have to sew those pieces onto your bolero. When it comes to making additions to my items like adding a hood, adding cuffs, adding ties, I always like to build those parts into the product that I have already created. So that's why I always slip stitch into that 6th chain space and I build my hood around the top there. So you're going to count 6 chain spaces, you're going to slip stitch, half double crochet, and then 1 double crochet into the same space. That's going to make your first 3 double crochet cluster. And then you're just going to insert 3 double crochet clusters in every chain space across that hood until you get to the opposite side, and you're going to be landing in that 6th chain space. And then you're just going to keep flipping your work back and forth. So 3 double crochet clusters in every chain space across the top of the hood. Whenever you get to that 6th chain space, you're going to 3 double crochet into that last cluster. You're going to chain 3, and then you're going to flip your work again. I usually do 20 to 25 rows for my hoods, but you're welcome to make your hood however you would like. Like I said, this is just the way that I do it. If you're comfortable making your own hood, you're welcome to speed this video up to the next step, which would be sewing our hood together and creating our ties. Like I said, there's a million ways for you to do all of these things. This is just finishing touches for how I make my personal boleros. Remember, whenever it comes to making my hoods, I start at that center seam. I count over 6 to 7 chain spaces down each side, and then I insert 3 double crochet clusters across the top of that bolero. Here is a completed hood for me without the sewing. So at this point, I have 20 to 25 rows. I think for this one, I used 20 rows of 3 double crochet clusters. And it looks like one giant granny square. You're just going to fold that giant granny square in half. But remember, before you sew it together, make sure that you have it folded the correct way. You don't want to have it folded and sewn on the wrong side and then your seams be on opposite sides. So always check for that center seam and fold your bolero in half with that center seam facing outwards. So then whenever you flip your bolero inside out or outside in, you'll have your seams on the right side. You're just going to be sewing across the top of that hood so that you can create that final seam of your hood. And then after I sew my hood in half like this, I always like to add a few finishing rows around the edge of the bolero, and you're going to do that the exact same way that you made the hood, where you're going to insert 3 double crochet clusters across the edge of the hood. I'm going to show you what it looks like unfinished, like you can see right here. I just always like to add an extra row or 3 so that it has a bit more of a finishing touch. I think the hoods look fuller and they look more completed if you do that. So I'm just going to insert 1 single crochet, 1 half double crochet, and 1 double crochet to start, and then you're going to insert 3 double crochet clusters across the edge of the hood. And I do that for a total of 3 to 5 rows depending on how big I want the hood to be. Remember, I'm a freeform crocheter, so I do things a little differently. I feel like sometimes I even use like different terminology. Maybe I don't know the right terminology. I'm just really good at being able to create things without following patterns, without having to follow instructions. So making these tutorials and writing these patterns has been really fun because I've been learning so much as far as crochet terminology, as far as how to complete things, how to make different stitches, and I've been learning a lot of helpful hints from my testers too. So thank you guys so much for being a part of these experiences and working alongside me. And here is our finished hood with those following 3 rows. Next, we are going to be moving on to our ties. So for our ties, it's super simple. I used all the color yarn that I used to make this bolero, and I'm just going to tie them together, slip stitch into that bottom corner of the bolero, and then I'm going to chain like 200 single crochet. I just make 1 giant chain. At the end of this, you're going to see that I add some fringe. It's really just me pulling the string through at the very end and cutting it at a longer length, but you guys are able to customize this however you like. Some people use shorter ties. Some people use buttons. Some people use the hook and latch ties. You can literally customize this however you would like. Please, please, please send me pictures to my Instagram. I love hyping up other artists. I love sharing you guys on my page. The people that have participated in my crochet along, their boleros have turned out amazing. Remember, I do have my crochet along step by step available under my playlist, and they're available on my highlights on my Instagram. If you are better with step by step, week by week, and you just kind of want a casual project to make. Remember that the hooded bolero and the moss fairy bolero patterns are available on my website. This tutorial uses steps from both the hooded and the moss fairy bolero. For my moss fairy bolero, these are the ties that I've created. It's just a series of chains, a really long chain. I slip stitch and then I chain 200. I tie off my work. I just think it looks really elegant. It looks really pretty, but it also lets you style this bolero in a variety of ways. So here's my finished product. Remember to subscribe to my channel, Sunny Days with Sam. Send me a screenshot and I will send you a discount code for 50%. Thanks so much for being here. I love you guys so much.